Let's get to the latest on the Israel-Hamas war, and for that, we bring in Dr. Alon Burstein, UCI visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow. Doctor, let's get straight into the news. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as you can see on your screen there, we are talking about some news coming out of the White House. The White House says that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has agreed to send a senior delegation to Washington, D.C. early next week to discuss an alternative strategy to an Israeli ground invasion of Rafah. Netanyahu has not been shy alone about saying that Israel will push forward with the Rafah assault regardless of international pressure, but the fact that this delegation is headed this way, does this indicate that there could actually be some room for negotiation? Is this Israel's way of working with the international community?
First of all, good to see you. And yes, this is really a reflection, at least, of the international pressure that Israel is under. I mean, more and more countries are announcing openly their objection to an Israeli ground invasion. It's not just the United States, right? I mean, the United States is obviously Israel's most important ally and the most influential actor. But, Italy announced today that they object to it, the United Kingdom, the EU. But really, it comes down to, is the United States going to support Israel? Because what will end up happening, if and when Israel does invade Rafah, where pressure is going to mount is in the Security Council. Will there be a Security Council resolution that will call on Israel to withdraw its forces, to go to immediate ceasefire? And Israel will be relying on the U.S. veto in order to stop that. So really, until the United States says, yes, you can go forth, Israel's unlikely to do that. The United States has been escalating its rhetoric, not downplaying. It's been escalating more and more, with some rumors already last week suggesting that around President Biden, they're not shy to already talk about the idea of suspending the weapons exports or limiting them to Israel if Israel does carry out this invasion without the sort of blessing of the United States. In their conversation yesterday between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Biden essentially told Netanyahu not to carry out the invasion until the U.S. approves it. He said that he would like a delegation to come to the United States to present the plans and discuss alternatives. And the two reportedly agreed that no invasion or even large operation in Rafah will be carried out until the two speak again, and that is scheduled for this weekend or early next week. Really, what we're seeing is Biden mounting more and more pressure on Israel to not carry out this invasion, to possibly look for alternatives. I will say that the story that's being told is a little bit different in both countries. In the U.S., it is being reported as this delegation is coming to discuss alternatives. In Israel, it's being reported that this delegation is coming to the U.S. in order to present the plans for Rafah and hear about alternatives, but that the aim is to explain the plans to the Americans. So there are two different narratives going on side by side. It remains to be seen how it'll actually play out.
So one entity is saying, well, they're coming over here to talk about the plan. The other entity is saying they're coming over to possibly edit the plan. But of course, we're still waiting to see if anything materializes on that aspect. I wanted to bring up this tweet with you, Alon. Bloomberg reporter Zach Cohen says that Netanyahu will speak with Senate Republicans via video conference call tomorrow, Wednesday. That's according to a spokesperson for Senate Republican Conference Chairman John Barrasso. This is curious to me because the lead Senate Democrat didn't make Netanyahu happy last week. Democratic leader Schumer, as we all recall, called for elections for a new government in Israel and harshly criticized Netanyahu's handling of the threat of Hamas. My question for you, what could Netanyahu gain from talking to Senate Republicans specifically?
You're absolutely right to be raising eyebrows. It's starting to be a little reminiscent of the last year of the presidency of Barack Obama, when the relationship between Obama and Netanyahu was getting worse and worse, and the Iran nuclear deal was sort of on the cards, and Netanyahu was invited by the Republicans to come speak at the House against the wishes of the White House. And it's not exactly at that level yet, but it's starting to be reminiscent of that. What we're seeing is more and more pressure on the Democratic side of the House and in general of DC to restrain Israel's activities. In turn, we have seen a lot more support in the Republican side, sort of blind support for Israel, no matter what it does, and belief in its mission to destroy Hamas and sort of do whatever it takes in order to destroy Hamas. I think what Netanyahu is hoping to gain here is two things. One, he's hoping to again rebuild that sort of automatic support that he gets, at least from the Republican side, with an eye to the U.S. elections and possibly seeing if the Republicans retake the House. Then I want to make sure that, all the Republicans still support Israel. But at the same time, he's hoping to pressure the Biden administration and say, look, you may be receiving internal pressure from maybe the progressive side of the Democratic Party or something like that. You may be receiving pressure to criticize Israel, but you're going to start to look bad because meanwhile, the Republicans can be more and more supportive of Israel. They don't have any pressure. They don't have the same pressures to restrain Israel's activity, to call for Israel to allow more humanitarian aid. And they're not facing the same pressures that the other side is facing. So I think he's hoping through this to, first of all, show that he still has support in the United States, show the Israeli public that there are still American lawmakers who want to hear him speak, who like him, I'll just say it bluntly, and who want to support Israel, quote unquote, no matter what. At the same time, he's hoping to use this both as leverage should the Republicans gain more strength in November, but even before that, to gain more leverage on the Democrats and say, look, you're going to not look good because you can pressure Israel all you want, but it's going to start to look like it's a partisan issue. Like on the one hand, the Republicans are in favor of Israel, whereas you're just doing nothing but criticizing the prime minister. So that's what he's hoping to gain. It remains to be seen if he can maneuver it. Again, last time it worked for him, and he's usually pretty good at playing these sides against each other. I'll just remind everyone that the White House National Security Advisor also stated explicitly yesterday when he was asked, it does not, Schumer and what Biden is saying does not constitute intervening in the internal matters of another country. And the National Security Advisor actually answered, maybe, but that's nothing compared to how they intervene in our internal politics. And when I saw that a day later, Netanyahu is due to speak to the Republicans, that's my alarm bells. I don't know if the National Security Advisor knew about this in advance or something like that, but that's really the reflection of what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's very possible he didn't. I believe the reports, at least the reporting on the internet, started about an hour or so ago, I want to say, when we heard about that talk. I
will say, I want to hope that the National Security Advisor, though, knows more than we do on reports on the internet.
You would hope so. Let's keep talking about this international tug of war that's going on. It was announced that Canada is ceasing arms exports to Israel after a motion. Alone, is this another significant step here? Have we heard of any Western countries taking a step like this?
Canada's the first. Canada's the first, and Canada's by far not a large exporter of arms and weaponry to Israel. This is not going to hurt Israel's war effort in any way. There's been already for a few months, Canada's been withholding a shipment of, I believe, 11 armored vehicles that Israel purchased, and Israel's been complaining. But again, that's the level that we're talking about on the one hand. On the other hand, there's a lot of fear in Israel that this could start a domino effect, that this could be something that if Canada, a country that is very well respected in the world, also known to be one of Israel's closest allies and friends, if Canada is taking this step, it's nowhere near as significant as if the United States took this step, but it's significant. It's something that could then mount pressure in the EU, for example, on EU countries or in the United Kingdom to say, look, you want to support Israel, that's fine. We're not telling you stop supporting Israel. Look at Canada. No one can argue that Canada is not a good friend to Israel, is not a good liberal country, is not on the right side of history, is not a good Western country. Even Canada has taken this step. So I think that is the significance of this move, and that is the reason that in Israel there's been a lot of backlash already. The Israeli foreign minister stated that Canada is delegitimizing Israel's right to defend itself, is supporting Hamas in this move. Again, Canada's move is not going to help Hamas. It's not going to actually curtail Israel's war effort, but the political ramifications, the domino effect, simply how it looks, in the same way as Israel being in the ICJ, the National Court of Justice, being accused of genocide. That unto itself is not changing the war and how it's being run, maybe changing something with regards to the entrance of humanitarian aid. But the image of being on the side of being indicted for genocide, whether you come out innocent or guilty several years from now, doesn't matter. Just that image is problematic for a country that is trying to fight for its moral compass. In the same way, being told by Canada, a country that is known in the world to be sort of on the right side of history often, a country is being told by Canada, we're going to stop selling weapons to you because we're not happy with the way you're running the war. It's just raising alarm bells in Israel. Something's not going right with the way Israel's explaining itself to the world. Today, Netanyahu said that in the Knesset. He said that something's wrong with our international diplomacy. I don't know if he was referring specifically to Canada, but it's certainly a reflection of where the winds may be blowing, and it will scare Israel if it starts to be a domino effect.
Let's talk about another nation state that's been in the headlines lately, Egypt. Egypt's foreign minister said on Monday that the U.S. should make clear to Israel what the consequences of a military push into Rafah would be. People who don't follow this war closely may be asking, why is Egypt piping in here? Well, Egypt shares a border with Rafah. We've seen them reinforcing their borders in recent memory alone. I'll just ask you, from a layman's standpoint, what is Egypt's main concern right now? Is it still that there may be some kind of periphery going through the barrier at this point?
So yes, there are still the same amount and increasing amount of internally displaced Palestinians that are all taking refuge in Rafah and in the refugee camp north of Rafah, the Al-Mawasi refugee camp. Since the beginning of the war, Israel's been calling on Palestinians in the northern part of the Gaza Strip to evacuate down south. Over 1 million internally displaced people have evacuated down south. And again, this is out of roughly 2.3 million people in the Gaza Strip. The vast majority of the population is now crammed into this area. This area is adjacent, as you said, to Egypt. Rafah is actually a divided city. The border between Gaza and Egypt goes through the middle of Rafah. That's where the Rafah crossing is. In Egypt, there's great fear that several things are going to happen. First of all, that there will be a mass fleeing of Palestinians simply bursting through the border and entering Egypt, which will not only be a major burden on Israel's social services, all of a sudden dealing with, anywhere from several 100,000 to 1 million refugees, but there's also a question, will they be allowed back into Gaza, and when will they be allowed back into Gaza? Gaza's under turmoil right now. It's under a war. It's unclear what the resolution is going to be. Who's going to govern Gaza? Is it going to be Israel? Is it going to be an international force? Is it going to be the Palestinian Authority? If it is Israel, are our refugees going to be allowed back in? How's that going to happen? Egypt is very scared of that, number one. The first facet of the mass evacuation of Palestinians that may result from this. Because if we think geographically, Rafah is down south, so if they're pushed down south, now there's nowhere to go, so to speak, other than the border. That is the reason that there's a lot of pressure in Egypt on Israel to develop a different plan to evacuate Palestinians to a different place in the Gaza Strip, anywhere but pushing them further down south. So that's the first fear. The second fear is the spilling over effect of violence into Egypt. Up until now, even though Israel has carried out several bombings right along the border, it is extremely careful to not have any accidental bombing that goes and may affect Egyptian citizens, Egyptian military forces. There's been 1 or 2 times since the war began, and if you think about the amount of bombing that has been going on, the amount of fighting, that's really not a lot to have mistakes along the border when you have Egyptian soldiers right there. However, if all of a sudden you do have mass evacuation of Palestinians, you're going to have Hamas fighters within them. You're going to have people who are, setting up a rocket launcher, which doesn't take more than, 2 people positioning a rocket launcher and firing. That could happen all of a sudden from Egyptian territory. Then what happens? Is Israel going to retaliate into Egypt? The Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty, as is right now very tense. So all these things come together and make Egypt very nervous. And Egypt is really putting pressure on the United States, saying, make clear to Israel that unlike the invasion of northern Gaza, this is not something that Israel can do. And after the fact, figure out how's it going to work, what's going to happen. Make clear that all the plans have to be in advance. And we're seeing that pressure is working. Israel, so far for well over a month, has been saying that its plans are ready. It has concluded most of its operations in Khan Yunis. It has not invaded yet. It has not even began the process of evacuating Palestinian civilians to these humanitarian islands or whatever they want to do. They're waiting for the go-ahead from the United States, and Egypt is trying to tell the United States, do not give them that go-ahead. Wait until maybe a truce, a ceasefire, maybe plans are more well-developed, but most importantly, wait. That's what Egypt is trying to say.
Yeah, and the IDF has said that they will be moving, and just to expand on the humanitarian island angle of this, the IDF had said that before any more extensive ground incursion takes place, they're going to move Palestinian civilians to humanitarian islands further up the Strip. That's something that you and I know we're still waiting for further clarity on alone. I want to move to another thing that caught my eye in the headlines. Armed and masked men from an array of clans and factions have started providing security for aid convoys in Gaza as Hamas tries to keep its influence in the enclave, Palestinian officials and sources in the militant group told Reuters. I remember a few weeks back, Doctor, I asked you about a vigilante group that appeared to begin patrolling over the streets of Gaza. They aimed to deter trade, profiteering, things of that nature. Do we know if this is the same group protecting the aid? Is it a similar group? Do we have any way of knowing? Is this a completely different group of people?
So as far as we know, these are actually different people, and it would seem actually rival people. Because what we spoke about several weeks ago is, I'll start somewhere else. The Hamas police force has been crashing. It has suffered not only from the war and Hamas operatives being killed in the fighting, it has also suffered from the fact that Israel has begun systematically assassinations of the chiefs of police. Today, the chief of police in Al-Nusrat refugee camp was assassinated. Yesterday, the head of Hamas's internal security force in the entire Gaza Strip was killed in Al-Shifa hospital. The police force has been disintegrating. This is one of the things that heavily contributed to the humanitarian disaster because aid trucks, according to international treaties, need to be escorted by police. What we spoke about several weeks ago was a Hamas initiative. It was Hamas establishing its own new force of pretty much street thugs to try and enforce security because Hamas wants to show that they're still the governing body. So it's not anarchy. If our police force can't function, great. So we'll hand out weapons to people who are, nominally trained and we nominally trust and send them out to the streets, primarily in Rafah, to enforce prices leading up to Ramadan, etc. What we're seeing now is different. What we're seeing is the process that Israel is trying to develop to bypass Hamas and also to bypass UNRWA and actually to make contact with local Palestinians and employ them indirectly to offer protection, almost like private security companies. We saw already in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip that Israel tried to make contact with a very powerful family called the Dagmash family. And there they tried to arrange with them, okay, we're going to coordinate the entrance of aid trucks with you and, obviously pay you or give you some of the aid. And in turn, you are going to offer security for the trucks. Hamas, in turn, executed the head of the Dagmash family for collaboration with the IDF. So there's this power game going on. What we're seeing now is another force was reported several days ago, and that's, I think, what you're talking about that Reuters reported. Another force was reported several days ago, a security force not belonging to any clan family, escorting trucks in the Gaza Strip. This is not a Hamas force. It's not been reported who it is, so it may be another strong family in the Gaza Strip. There was another rumor circulating that these are actually members of the Palestinian Authority security forces that Israel has allowed in to the Gaza Strip in order to escort the trucks because they're no friends of Hamas either. So to let them have sort of this private security force, but whoever it is, it's not actually the same thugs that we were talking about that were patrolling the streets of Rafah. It's actually their rivals. It's people who the IDF is trying to employ in order to counter Hamas and say Hamas is not going to provide security for the aid trucks because then Hamas ends up stealing the aid. It's going to be someone else, either these private families, possibly Palestinian Authority security forces. We'll likely find out more about it in the coming days. These things don't tend to stay secret. But right now, what we do know is it's not Hamas or the same police forces. It's someone else.
Let's hit on one last thing before we go here. You brought up Shifa Hospital. The IDF says that dozens of terrorists have been eliminated and approximately 300 suspects were apprehended during IDF activity at the Shifa Hospital. The forces apprehended dozens of prominent Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists at the hospital involved in directing terrorist activities in Judea and Samaria, and operatives in the rocket unit of Islamic Jihad, according to a post by the IDF. Not a lot of details have been given in this post that we're looking at, but I want to ask you, do we know anything further about what has been happening in Shifa Hospital throughout this war alone?
Well, since the war started, the IDF centered around Al-Shifa Hospital as one of the main headquarters that Hamas had built. The Al-Shifa Hospital is one of the biggest hospitals in the Gaza Strip. I'll add as a moment of anecdote, ironically, it was built by Israel when the Gaza Strip was under Israeli occupation, which is one of the reasons that Israel actually has all of these schematics of how Shifa looks and where Hamas operatives may be. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has said that Hamas had set up its headquarters underneath Shifa Hospital. In November, the IDF ended up raiding the hospital already. It did find a very extensive array of tunnels and networks underneath Al-Shifa Hospital. It did not find the headquarters that it expected to find. It thought that it was going to find all the communications arrays, all the different hideouts of the Hamas leadership. It found extensive Hamas activity, but not what it expected to find. What is, though, a fact in every single hospital we've seen this. This is happening in Nasser Hospital, Kamal Adwan Hospital, it's happening in Al-Aqsa Hospital. Hospitals are a staging ground that Hamas has been using strategically because Israel has not bombed down hospitals from the sky, at least not on purpose. And so it's to some extent a safe zone for operatives to try to at least gather their forces and sometimes actually launch attacks from these areas. Israel has systematically shown that it is not going to be shy of entering hospitals. Again, Kamal Adwan, Nasser, a bunch of hospitals that I could mention, Israel has raided. What happened in Al-Shifa Hospital is Israel concluded its operation there already in December and evacuated. And since then, the hospital is somewhat functioning with limited resources it has. And there's also thousands of internally displaced people who routinely come to the hospital because it's a place of refuge, it's a place that there are no bombings, it's a place where you get humanitarian aid. What has happened over the last several weeks, the IDF has stated that Hamas has recognized that leading up to a hostage exchange, leading up to a 6-week truce, Hamas needs to have as many forces as it can on the ground in order to retake the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, to send its forces out to start governing. So they have been gradually sending their forces back into Al-Shifa Hospital to set up new command centers, new structures of government. That is one of the reasons that, again, the chief of internal security in the entire Gaza Strip had come to the hospital several days ago in order to start beginning the plans for the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. This led to the IDF's invasion. Now that operation is still going on. We're still going to hear what's happening in the coming days.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Dr. Alon Burstein, as always, we appreciate your time, and we always look forward to your daily YouTube updates on the war as well. Take care.